everybody, welcome to Deluxe Designs. Today I want to show you guys how I am going to make a dress for this G3 Draculaura. I'm going to use pink satin and some glittery rose petals that I made. So I made these using the Cricut. So I found a file for rose petals and I had some glitter iron-on. So I cut them out in the rose petal shape. I'm going to cut these out of the fabric along the outside edge, and I'm going to layer these onto a dress. Now I do want to say to you guys, I am self-taught. I didn't take any classes or anything like that. I just had a home ec class in grade 9, and my grandma, who I call Nanny, she always had a little sewing box at her place, you know, the cookie tins, as everybody remembers if they're around my age, that you'd open up and there's all a bunch of goodies inside. And so I always tinkered with it when I went over to her house, and that's kind of my inspiration for doing this now. But I did just kind of teach myself along the way. I will also say that this was going to be a gown, but I ran out of supplies for this glitter iron-on, and I'm trying to just use what I have on hand as opposed to buying more. So I'm going to make it kind of like a short little fairy dress now with a circle skirt, and hopefully this works out. I also don't draw ideas before I do them. I just kind of have a picture in my head and I get inspired by fabrics and I try to make those things happen. Honestly, projects end up taking me in different directions all the time. Something doesn't work out and I just kind of veer off and do something else, which is the bonus of being able to make stuff for my own store. So let's see how this goes. Okay, so I've gone and finished cutting out the rest of these petals that I have, and I've cut out my circle skirt. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hem this. I like to hem ahead of time, and then I play with where the bodice sits on it to make sure it's the length that I want. That's just the way I operate. Other people like to hem at the end, but I prefer to do it at the beginning most of the time. Then I'm going to sit and lay out these how I want. I think I figured out how I'm going to do it, and I will show you guys that as soon as I have this part hemmed. Okay, so I've hemmed the skirt. Because of the fabric and the way I cut it, I have a little bit of a ripple effect I can't speak today. Effect at the hem, which I really don't mind, to be honest with you, so I'm gonna leave it like that. I did a zigzag stitch on the hem. Sometimes I use straight, sometimes I use zigzag, sometimes I just, you know, go where the day takes me. I want to recommend anybody who sews and uses pins all the time. This is my favorite little toy. It is a pin magnet. So when you're done, you just pick up all the pins with the magnet and they're all back on here instead of sticking them into that little strawberry thing that all our grandmothers had when we were growing up. The other thing I recommend is these little clips. I got them from Michael's, so they're great for clipping hems down or attaching pieces and holding them together, and they're really handy for sewing fabrics like faux leather, vinyl, fabrics that if you put a pin into them will actually leave a bit of a hole, and you don't want that. So these are great to hold those pieces together as you feed them through the sewing machine. So I just thought I would show you guys and recommend them. Now I'm going to place these. I think I know how I'm going to do it. So I'm going to lay them out and show you my plan and then get to sewing. Okay, so this is the pattern I'm going with for the first layer. So I've alternated the largest and the large one and the medium one back and forth throughout the bottom. I want a little bit of an overhang. I have backup plans for what I want to do here depending on how it looks once it's gathered and ruffled a little bit. It might be a tulle, little skirt underneath to poke out. I might do some other trim underneath. I'm not sure yet, but this is where I'm going to start. I've cut a section. This is where the back will be. I've left it a little open here. I can always pin another piece on top, or stitch another piece on top, I should say, once the dress is together to fill in any gaps there might be, but I don't want the bulk of it being there, so I'm going to leave that off for now. So I'm going to stitch this down. I want to do one row of the small, and then I'm going to leave a gap at the top for me to gather, and I will show you that I wait until after the bodice is attached to do the final layer of petals. So here's the skirt with the 2 layers stitched on. I used a darker thread on top, and I made sure to layer this over top of where the other darker, where I sewed the bigger ones on, so that it would show, or would hide. See, I told you I can't talk. So I would hide the stitching from the underneath layer as I go. Now I'm going to gather this upper edge to give it more ruffle, and I'm going to create a simple bodice for Draculaura so I can attach the bottom to the top. I will show you when that is done, and then I will add these smaller, the last layer of smaller ones to the top. I like to hand sew these on because I will try to show you why I do that. There is a reason. Sorry for the start and stop of the video, but I wanted to do a time lapse. But I also wanted to explain to you guys what I'm doing, so it seemed kind of like I need to start and stop. So what I've done here is put a stitch near the top. So what I'm going to do is, well, okay, so if you want to gather a skirt, you can use a long stitch on your sewing machine. So sometimes I use 3 if it's a delicate fabric, but 3, 4, 5, whatever your long stitch is on your sewing machine you can use. But you don't go back and forth to lock your ends. You got to stop there. Trust me, I've made that mistake a few times. Or you can do it with a needle and just go in and out with a long stitch by hand. Then if you did it with a machine, you grab one of the threads of the 2, doesn't matter which one, and you pull. And that is how you can easily gather a skirt. You can pull it as tight as you want, as loose as you want, whatever you are looking for. And then what I end up doing is sort of taking the doll, kind of holding it up, making sure I have enough to make it around the doll when it's all done. Sorry, I was holding her a little too high. Right, so now I know I can lock my stitch in here, and I know I have enough to make it around the doll's waist. So I just cut the tails a little bit to make it easier, and I just put a couple knots in just to kind of hold it in place so it doesn't undo. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach this skirt to the bodice that I have ready for her, and then I'm going to show you attaching the top layer of petals. So if I had attached the top layer of petals here, they would have made it very bulky in this section, and they don't lay quite right if you sewed it against the bodice right there. It might work on scales for people, but on doll scale it's just too bulky, and especially with their tiny little waists, you don't want to add too much bulk in that area because it just makes it lumpy bumpy. So I'm going to attach this for you guys and show you how it looks in one piece. Okay, so I have the bodice attached. It's not fully how I want it quite yet, but that's okay. What I'm going to do is actually put in closures at the back so that I can see exactly where I want everything to sit, and then I'm going to stitch my top layer of petals on top. I'm actually kind of liking the way this looks. I think it's going to be kind of neat with a tulle petticoat underneath. So let's see how this goes. Alrighty, don't mind me. I'm hiding the top so that you guys can't see what I've done to finish it off. But I wanted to show you how I added the petals along the waistline. I hand stitched these on, and man, did I find out that glitter and thread do not mix. If I had this on time lapse, you guys would have wondered why I paused the video, because it took me forever. But here we go. So that's the top layer of petals. I just wanted to kind of sit up on the waist and then flare out. Turned out pretty good. I think you're gonna like it. So now I'm going to dress her, put her on a stand, and show off the finished product. I did want to mention that I hand stitched the top row so that I had more control of where they were placed and how full they were. And to show you, this is what happens. This is a very small mess, but this is what happens when creatives get busy. A little bit of everything everywhere. Draculaura in all her puffy rose petal glory. So she's fully layered up, nice and full circle skirt. I added a pink, baby pink tulle petticoat underneath so that she's got a nice full skirt and it flares out. I added a little jewel here, crazy glue, so it should not come off. Added the 2 petals. I cut them out in a smaller size and then gathered them so they shaped around her bust. And paired her with a little pair of shoes I had on hand. They're technically a cherry red color, but they kind of look cool with the dress. I hope you guys all like her. Thank you for watching.